Hey everyone, welcome to the Roman History Iceberg Explained. Quick programming note, I actually completed this video a year ago for my main channel, and it may be a bit rougher around the edges than my recent content. Anyway, hope you enjoy. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. The Roman Empire, initially centered on the city of Rome itself, was established in 27 BC following the fall of the Roman Republic, and lasted until the 5th century in the West, and until 1453 in the East. The establishment of the Roman Empire began under the leadership of Caesar Augustus, who became the emperor in 27 BC after eliminating all credible rivals. That said, the trappings of the Republic were largely maintained, as were the institutions, including the Senate. This early period of the empire is known as the Principate. Augustus's rule, known for its peace and prosperity, marked the beginning of the Pax Romana, a 2-century-long period of stability, expansion, and prosperity for the Roman Empire. This era saw the flourishing of Roman literature, art, architecture, and religion. The Roman Empire faced significant challenges during the crisis of the 3rd century, characterized by civil wars, economic instability, and social unrest. This period eventually led to the division of the empire into the Western and Eastern Roman empires, with Diocletian and later Constantine playing pivotal roles in its restructuring. Constantine, in particular, was notable for adopting Christianity and establishing Constantinople as a new capital. Notably, in the 3rd century, Roman institutions weakened substantially, with this second period of the Roman Empire being referred to as the Dominate, from Dominus, which is generally translated as master. Yeah, that sounds a bit less friendly than Principate, doesn't it? The Western Roman Empire eventually fell in 476 AD, marking the end of classical antiquity and the beginning of the early Middle Ages. The Eastern Roman Empire, more popularly now known as the Byzantine Empire, continued until 1453. Julius Caesar, born on July 13th in 100 BC, is one of the most prominent figures in Roman history, and world history in general. He was born into the Roman political ruling class. Despite being part of the old Roman nobility, his family was not exceedingly rich. Caesar's rise to power was marked by his skill both as a military leader and a statesman. His military campaigns, particularly in Gaul from 58 to 50 BC, significantly expanded the Roman territory and bolstered his reputation as a formidable general. Oh yeah, and if there's one thing that Caesar knew best, it was public relations. He wrote his own commentaries on the Gallic Wars contemporaneously. Caesar's political ascent was characterized by strategic alliances, notably the formation of the First Triumvirate in 60 BC with Crassus and Pompey. This alliance allowed him to become consul and later take control of Gaul. However, after Crassus's death and Pompey's realignment with the Senate, tensions rose, culminating in Caesar's defiant crossing of the Rubicon in 49 BC. This act led to a civil war, which Caesar won, solidifying his power in Rome. Once in control, Caesar initiated significant reforms. He reformed the calendar, which led to the creation of the Julian calendar, and implemented policies to centralize power and manage Rome's vast territories. Caesar's reign as a dictator was short-lived. In 44 BC, fearing his growing power, a group of senators, including Brutus and Cassius, assassinated him in the Roman Senate House. His death on March 15, 44 BC, marked a pivotal moment in Roman history, leading to the demise of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire, under his adoptive son, Augustus. His legacy extends far beyond his life, with his name becoming synonymous with supreme rule, as reflected in titles like Kaiser and Tsar. So yeah, pretty important dude to say the least. Augustus, born Gaius Octavius on September 23, 63 BC, and later known as well Julius Caesar, is a central figure in the transition from the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire. His path to power began following the assassination of his great-uncle, Julius Caesar, in 44 BC. At just 18, he was named Julius Caesar's adoptive son and heir. This sparked a power struggle culminating in the formation of the Second Triumvirate with Mark Antony and Lepidus. This uneasy alliance eventually fell apart, leading to a confrontation with Antony, who was allied with Cleopatra. Augustus emerged victorious from the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, becoming the sole ruler of Rome. Augustus's reign marked significant changes in Roman governance and society. He maintained a facade of the Roman Republic, with the Senate and legislative assemblies holding apparent power, but he wielded absolute authority by controlling major military commands and holding positions such as tribune and censor for life. This clever balance allowed him to assert autocratic control while preserving traditional republican elements. Augustus clearly inherited his adoptive father's sense of public relations, but also knew firsthand the consequences of taking too much power too openly. He was also known for his administrative genius, transforming the decaying republic into a stable, monarchic regime that would endure in some form for almost 1,500 years. He implemented reforms across taxation, road networks, the postal service, and established the Praetorian Guard, police, and firefighting services in Rome. Augustus also embarked on an extensive building program, enhancing Rome's architectural grandeur. Augustus died in AD 14 at age 75, most likely from natural causes, and trust me, we aren't going to be hearing about a lot of Roman emperors who die of natural causes. I'm going to foreshadow something a bit here. One of the future emperors dies of a natural cause involving really aesthetic cabbages. Also, just a point of commentary. Augustus's public relations campaign to hide his true power level was so effective that 2 millennia later, the average person on the street will cite Julius Caesar as the first Roman emperor, not Augustus. Yeah, this dude could school Goku in power level concealment. Latin is best known as the language of Rome and its surrounding region. To put it simply, it is the language of the tribe of the Latins, an Italic tribe which founded Rome. Vulgar Latin, the language of the common people, developed into the family of languages known as the Romance languages. Latin provided a common language for the educated classes of Europe and allowed the facilitation of ideas across cultures and borders. Latin is still in active use today as a liturgical language. Quite the legacy on Latin. Oh yeah, and while Latin doesn't have the same classic clout as Greek, apparently Virgil's writings are pretty good. Greek was a popular language amongst the Roman elite and educated classes from the Republican period onwards. Further, following the Roman subjugation of Greece in the 2nd century BC, the Roman Republic acquired a great deal of Greek speakers. Also, it's worth noting that the Romans themselves considered themselves descendants of Aeneas, who was himself a descendant of the Greek goddess Aphrodite. The Romans would also, to use a modern term, quote-unquote, culturally appropriate every element of Greek culture they could get their hands on. Oh, and for my ERE aboos, yes, Greek eventually supplanted Latin as the official language of the Eastern Roman Empire. Also, as I'm recording this, I can already imagine the disgruntled comments from Byzantine Empire enjoyers for calling them ERE aboos. But yeah, I'll be dropping that term a few times in this video. Nero was born on December 15th, 37 AD in Italy, and was the 5th Roman emperor and the final emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. His reign lasted from 54 AD until his death in 68 AD. Nero was the son of Agrippina the Younger, a great-granddaughter of the Emperor Augustus. After the death of his father when Nero was 2 years old, his mother married the Emperor Claudius, who later adopted Nero as his heir. Also, quick aside, the apple fell real far from the Caesar Augustus tree. Nero's rise to power was marked by a series of manipulations and eliminations orchestrated largely by his mother, Agrippina. She married her uncle Claudius and convinced him to favor Nero over his own son, Britannicus. Nero's early reign, starting when he was just 16 years old, quote-unquote, guided by his mother, Agrippina. However, as Nero sought more independent rule, tensions arose, leading to his increasing distance from his mother. Ultimately, Nero's struggle for power culminated in Agrippina's non-consensual elimination. Oh yeah, and programming note. YouTube doesn't like big mean words, so you're going to be hearing about non-consensual eliminations and quote-unquote sloppings in this video. Nero's rule is infamous for various reasons, including his personal debaucheries, extravagances, and the age-old accusation of him burning Rome, which has been debated by historians. He is also known for his persecutions of Christians, which contributed significantly to his notorious reputation. His reign saw significant events such as the Great Fire of Rome, the suppression of Boudicca's rebellion in Britain, and the beginning of the First Jewish-Roman War. Oh yeah, and this cat was a real patron of the arts. He ordered the construction of amphitheaters and promoted athletic games and contests. Wait, did I say he was a patron of the arts? Nope. Nero's performances as an actor, poet, musician, and charioteer were seen as scandalous by the aristocracy, as these were roles typically reserved for slaves and public entertainers. The later years of Nero's reign were marked by increasing opposition and rebellion against his rule. Following a rebellion, Nero was declared a public enemy and was condemned to not living. Facing this imminent threat, Nero fled Rome and ended himself of his own accord on June 9, 68, at the age of 30. His death ended the Julio-Claudian dynasty and led to a brief period of civil war known as the Year of the Four Emperors. Oh yeah, and some modern historians like to talk about how he was actually a really great emperor, because hey, even in academia, you've got to make a name for yourself through engagement farming. Caligula was born on August 31st, 12 AD in Italy, and was the Roman emperor from 37 to 41 AD. He was the third emperor of Rome, succeeding Tiberius, and a member of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. Caligula was the son of the Roman general Germanicus and Agrippina the Elder, Augustus's granddaughter, making him a prominent figure in the first ruling family of the Roman Empire. His father, Germanicus, died in 19 AD, and his family became entangled in a bitter conflict with Emperor Tiberius. This feud led to the destruction of his family. Side note, every time I say the name Tiberius, I vomit a bit in my mouth. If you know, you know. Caligula's reign began with a severe illness of some sort, after which he became increasingly paranoid, sadistic, and indulgent in his excesses. He squandered the state's treasury, executed rivals and supporters alike, and made pretensions to divinity, including erecting statues of himself. His actions during his reign included raising taxes to fund his extravagant lifestyle. Caligula's reign is marked by several infamous anecdotes, such as his intention to appoint his horse, Glitterhoof, Incitatus, as a consul. His reign ended abruptly with his slopping in January 41st AD by members of the Praetorian Guard, starting a grand tradition amongst the Praetorians. Oh yeah, and some modern historians say that he was a real swell dude, because yeah, gotta farm that engagement. Also, on an entirely unrelated note, Caligula was actually a Germanic spy sent to Rome to infiltrate the empire from the inside. Tell me what you think of my theory in the comments below, and my script says to insert a winky face in the video here. Spartacus was a Thracian gladiator who led one of the most significant slave uprisings against the Roman Republic, known as the Third Servile War, or Gladiatorial War. Spartacus was believed to be of Thracian origin. His background includes descriptions of him being a former Roman soldier who later became a prisoner and was sold into gladiatorial slavery. Historical accounts vary, but they generally agree on his Thracian heritage and his eventual role as a gladiator. In 73 BC, Spartacus, along with about 70 fellow gladiators and slaves, escaped from a gladiatorial school near Capua. They armed themselves with crude weapons initially, and then seized gladiatorial weapons and armor. This group formed the nucleus of what would become a much larger slave army. During the rebellion, Spartacus's forces engaged in several successful battles against Roman armies, showcasing his skills as a military leader. At its peak, his army was said to have numbered in the tens of thousands, consisting mainly of escaped slaves. Despite initial victories, Spartacus's aim seemed to be more focused on escaping the clutches of Rome, rather than initiating a widespread slave revolution. Emperor Justinian, known as Justinian the Great, was a pivotal figure in the history of the Byzantine Empire, reigning from 527 to 565. He rose from humble beginnings to become one of the most influential rulers of his era and in history. Justinian was born to peasant parents and was likely the last native Latin-speaking Roman emperor. He took the Roman name Justinianus from his uncle, Justin, who was a high-ranking military commander in Constantinople. Justinian received a classical education and military training, eventually ascending to the throne as co-emperor in 527, and becoming the sole emperor upon his uncle's death later that year. He is renowned for sponsoring the Codex Justinianus, Code of Justinian, a comprehensive codification of Roman law. This legal code synthesized various sets of laws and legal interpretations, influencing the development of legal systems in many parts of Europe. Justinian's reign was marked by significant military campaigns aimed at restoring the territories of the Western Roman Empire. His general Belisarius successfully conquered the Vandal kingdom in North Africa and the Ostrogothic kingdom, bringing regions like Dalmatia, Sicily, Italy, and Rome under Byzantine control. These military achievements contributed to the brief restoration of the Roman Empire's former glory. The Roman Republic, spanning from 509 BC to 27 BC, was initially marked by the transition from monarchy to a more democratic form of government. This period commenced with the overthrow of the Roman kingdom's last king, Tarquin, and concluded with the establishment of the Roman Empire when Octavian, later known as Augustus, was made princeps. The governance of the Roman Republic was characterized by a form of democracy that included the Senate and several assemblies. In times of crisis, the Senate and consuls could appoint a temporary dictator, with Cincinnatus being one of the most famous. And yeah, we are going to get to him. Oh yeah, and as I'm recording this, I realized I never explained the famous SPQR, Senatus Populusque Romanus. This abbreviation means the Senate and the people of Rome, which was meant to stand in stark contrast to other polities which were ruled by autocrats. Roman society was distinctly divided into patricians, initially the wealthy class, and plebeians, initially the general citizenry. Significant legal and social reforms emerged from the conflict of orders, a prolonged struggle between the plebeians and patricians. This conflict led to the establishment of the Concilium Plebis and the enactment of the 12 Tables, Rome's earliest codified laws. These reforms progressively improved the rights of plebeians, including their eligibility to marry into patrician families and to hold political offices like the consulship. And in time, wealthy plebeians intermarried with aristocratic but broke patricians. Throughout the Republic era, Rome underwent substantial territorial expansion, evolving from a city-state to a major Mediterranean power. This expansion was largely driven by military conquests, with the Punic Wars against Carthage being particularly pivotal due to the elimination of their most serious regional rival. The end of the Roman Republic was marked by a series of civil wars and political strife, culminating in the rise of Octavian. His victory in the Battle of Actium over Mark Antony, and his subsequent elevation to emperor in 27 BC, effectively ended the Republic, though due to the inherent hatred of kingship and autocracy, this was concealed at the time, and Augustus portrayed himself as restoring the public he dismantled. Early Christianity in the Roman Empire was initially persecuted, followed by eventual adoption as the state religion. In the first centuries AD, Christians were often persecuted by Roman authorities. This persecution stemmed from various factors, including Christians' refusal to worship Roman gods, which was seen as an act of treason against the state and its divine emperor. Christians' distinct practices and beliefs, such as the Eucharist, were often misunderstood and fueled suspicions of subversive behavior. Notable persecutions occurred under emperors like Nero and Diocletian, where Christians were subjected to brutal punishments and martyrdom. However, the tide began to turn in the early 4th century with Emperor Constantine. His personal conversion to Christianity marked a significant shift. In 313 AD, the Edict of Milan was issued, granting religious tolerance throughout the empire and ending the persecution of Christians. This pivotal moment laid the groundwork for Christianity's rise to dominance in Roman society. By the end of the 4th century, under Emperor Theodosius I, Christianity became the official state religion of the Roman Empire. Oh yeah, and time for an aside. Constantine, who I assume was always up for a good battle and a round of pagan partying, turned in for the night and saw the Chi Rho floating in the sky. It was accompanied by a heavenly voice saying, "In this sign, you will conquer." So, Constantine does what any reasonable emperor with a newfound divine endorsement would do. He orders his soldiers to slap this new symbol on their shields. Anyway, long story short, he slops on a fellow tetrarch at the Battle of Milvian Bridge, consolidating power, leading to this personal conversion, and the eventual conversion of the empire to Christianity. Yeah, so basically, 1700 years ago, a guy had a dream, and that dream changed world history. What if he had dreamt of Mithra that day? I'm kinda curious to see what the Mithra dream universe would look like. Also, how long until we get a comment saying, "I'm from the Mithra dream universe. Is this a new Mandela effect?" Well, if you do make this comment, and I'm channeling my inner Art Bell here, tell me all about the traditions and customs in the Mithra dream universe. The Byzantine Empire, known to its inhabitants simply as the Roman Empire, was a continuation of the Eastern Roman Empire, surviving for over 1,000 years after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The empire's foundation is traced back to Emperor Constantine, who, in 330 AD, established Constantinople, now Istanbul, on the site of the ancient Greek colony Byzantium. This city, strategically located between Europe and Asia, became a significant trade and cultural hub, influencing the course of European history. The Byzantine Empire reached its zenith during the reign of Justinian from 527 to 565 AD, expanding to include much of the Mediterranean coast, including North Africa and Italy. This period of expansion was short-lived, however, as the empire faced a series of challenges, including wars with Sassanid Persia and the Muslim conquests of the 7th century, which resulted in the loss of key provinces like Egypt and Syria. The 9th to 11th centuries, under the Macedonian dynasty, marked a renaissance for the Byzantine Empire. It expanded again, but this resurgence was halted by the Battle of Manzikert in 1071 against the Seljuk Turks, leading to significant territorial losses. The empire's decline was further accelerated by the Fourth Crusade, which led to the sack of Constantinople in 1204 and the division of the empire into various rump states, including the Empire of Nicaea, the Despotate of Morea, and the rather ambitiously named Empire of Trebizond. Throughout its history, the Byzantine Empire was a bastion of Orthodox Christianity, with emperors often aligning themselves closely with the Church, influencing doctrine and politics. The empire was known for its complex bureaucratic system, which included various officials like the Praetorian Prefect, regional governors, and city councils, responsible for administration and tax collection. This contrasted to Western Europe, where things were generally done on a more ad hoc basis. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 to the Ottoman Empire marked the end of the Byzantine Empire and the start of the Abus game planning on how they could have turned it all around. Oh yeah, and you do it by taking a lot of loans, getting mercenaries, going over the force limits, and blocking the Ottomans from crossing the Dardanelles, and praying Skanderbeg stays alive long enough to bring the pain to the Ottomans. Here's one for all you she-wolf appreciators out there. Romulus and Remus are central figures in the founding myth of Rome, and of course are not actual historical figures. They were twins, believed to be the sons of Rhea Silvia, a Vestal virgin, and Mars, the god of war. The story takes place in Alba Longa, an ancient Latin city near Rome's future site. Their grandfather Numitor was dethroned by his brother Amulius, who feared a challenge from Numitor's descendants. To eliminate any threat, Amulius ordered the infants Romulus and Remus to be killed, but they were instead abandoned on the Tiber River's bank. The twins miraculously survived, with legends often depicting them being suckled by a she-wolf. They were later found and adopted by a shepherd named Faustulus and his wife. Faustulus instilled in them values like justice, honor, and loyalty, and educated them about Roman traditions, customs, and values. As adults, the twins became involved in a dispute that led to Remus's capture and their discovery of their true heritage. They killed Amulius and restored Numitor to the throne. Afterwards, they decided to found their own city. Disagreements over the location led to a contest of augury, where Romulus saw 12 auspicious birds compared to Remus's 6, claiming divine approval. The dispute escalated, and Remus was killed, either by Romulus or one of his supporters. Romulus became the first king of Rome, establishing its institutions, government, military, and religious traditions. He expanded Rome's territory through wars, most notably with the Sabines. So yeah, while we can look back and say, this is not how Rome was founded, this is how the Romans themselves believed Rome was founded. Well, arguably. I haven't read Livy, but according to my research, his account of the story makes it clear that this is a tale intended to convey moral, cultural, and political messages, not historical facts. Further, as Roman intellectual thought evolved, especially under the influence of Greek philosophy, I would guess that there was likely to be increased skepticism about the literal truth of such myths among the educated. Also, as an aside, I would like to do a specific video dedicated to the mythic history of Rome and the Roman kingdom. Let me know in the comments if there would be any interest in that. I know it's not the most popular Roman topic, but if there's interest, I'll do it. Cicero, born in 106 BC and was a Roman statesman, lawyer, scholar, philosopher, and writer. Cicero was born to a wealthy family in the Roman equestrian order. Basically, he was born to a family that was up there, but not an elite family, making his accomplishments much more impressive. His father ensured that he and his brother received a quality education in philosophy and rhetoric in Rome and Greece. Cicero also studied Roman law, arguing his first case in 81 BC. And, as lawyers have been known to do in republican forms of government, he made the jump to politics. He became quaestor in 75 BC, praetor in 66 BC, and consul in 63 BC, the youngest man to attain this rank from a non-political family. Cicero experienced periods of exile throughout his political life. He refused alliances with Caesar, preferring political independence, and later aligned with Pompey during the civil war between Caesar and Pompey. Following Caesar's ending in 44 BC, Cicero briefly attempted alliances with key figures, but was ultimately declared a public enemy by the Second Triumvirate, leading to his assassination. His head and hands were allegedly displayed in Rome as a warning to others. The Punic Wars were a series of 3 wars fought between Rome and Carthage from 264 BC to 146 BC. At the end of this conflict, Rome emerged as the dominant superpower of the Mediterranean. The First Punic War, 264 to 241. This one was fought mainly for control over Sicily. Rome emerged victorious, marking the start of its expansion beyond the Italian peninsula. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201, the most famous of the three, largely due to the Carthaginian general Hannibal's remarkable crossing of the Alps with his war elephants to attack Rome. Rome eventually won the war. The Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BC. Rome laid siege to Carthage and eventually destroyed the city, and integrated the remaining Carthaginian territories into the Roman fold. Oh yeah, and let's just say Carthage wasn't going to be growing any aesthetic cabbages anytime soon. I would like to do a deep dive on the Punic Wars, or the figures involved in them, and I'll take a second to plug myself here. Hit the subscribe button for when that drops. The Roman kingdom marks the earliest period in Roman history. It began with the city's founding in 753 BC, and ended with the overthrow of the kings and the establishment of the Republic around 509 BC. This period is characterized by a monarchical form of government where the city and its territories were ruled by kings. The history of this period is not well documented, as most records from that time did not survive. Consequently, much of what is known is based on oral tradition and later writings from the Republic and Empire periods. According to tradition, Rome was ruled by a succession of 7 kings during this period. The monarchy was elective, not hereditary, with the Senate playing a significant role in the election process. The Roman kingdom ended in approximately 509 BC, when Lucius Tarquinius Superbus was expelled following the violation of Lucretia by his son. Also, important to mention, the Romans hated monarchy as a result of this foundational myth, which, as I've mentioned, was one of the reasons Augustus was careful never to appear too monarchic, and one of the reasons Julius Caesar got slopped. The imperial cult in ancient Rome was a significant aspect of Roman religion and politics. It served to deify emperors, and occasionally their family members, posthumously. The emperor, while alive, was not considered an immortal, all-powerful god, but he did represent the divine authority of the Roman state. This essentially meant that the imperial cult fostered the worship of the state as embodied in the emperor, rather than the individual himself. Some emperors had much more successful imperial cults. As you may have been able to guess, there weren't too many people out there simping for, let's say Nerva. The imperial cult coexisted with other forms of Roman religion, but declined as the authority of the Roman emperors declined in the 3rd century AD. The crisis of the 3rd century, spanning from 235 to 284 AD, was a tumultuous period for the Roman Empire, marked by a series of events that nearly led to its collapse. This era is often referred to as the military anarchy or imperial crisis, due to the severe challenges faced by the empire. The crisis commenced with the ending of Emperor Alexander Severus by his own troops in 235 AD, initiating a 50-year period of instability. This event marked the end of the Severan dynasty and paved the way for what would be known as the era of the Barracks Emperors, where a series of military leaders ascended to power, often for brief and tumultuous reigns. The crisis was eventually resolved through the military victories of Emperor Aurelian, who reunified the empire between 270 to 275. It officially ended with Emperor Diocletian's accession in 284, who implemented significant reforms to stabilize the empire both economically and militarily. These reforms included the establishment of the Tetrarchy, a system of rule by 4 emperors, to better manage the vast empire. The crisis of the 3rd century is also generally seen as the start of late antiquity. Oh yeah, and to foreshadow once again, we're getting fairly close to some really aesthetic cabbages. Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus were significant figures in the late Roman Republic, known for their attempts at social and political reform aimed at helping the lower classes. Tiberius was born around 163 BC, and his younger brother Gaius was born around 154 BC. They came from a prominent family. Their father had been a consul, and their mother, Cornelia, was the daughter of Scipio Africanus, a renowned general of the Second Punic War. Their family connections placed them in a position of influence in Roman society. Tiberius Gracchus's political career is most notable for his agrarian reform. Concerned with the economic difficulties of small farmers and the decline in military manpower due to a lack of land-owning soldiers, he proposed redistributing public land to the landless poor. This proposal was controversial, facing opposition from the Senate and the land-owning elite. Tiberius's reform efforts ended tragically in 133 BC, when he was beaten out of existence by a group of senators and their followers. Gaius Gracchus, following his brother's footsteps, also entered politics and became a tribune in 123 BC. He had a broader vision for reform, which included purifying the Senate, making it more responsive to the people's interests, and ensuring better treatment of soldiers. Gaius reintroduced his brother's land law and passed a law that allowed the state to sell grain at subsidized prices to citizens, thereby addressing food shortages. Additionally, he focused on infrastructure improvements, such as road construction, and attempted to tackle corruption in public offices. He also proposed extending Roman citizenship, a move that was not well received and blocked. Gaius's political career faced significant opposition, and his failure to be re-elected as tribune marked the beginning of his downfall. Many of his laws were repealed by his political opponents, and in 121 BC, amid escalating political conflict, Gaius and many of his supporters were non-consensually ended. The brothers are remembered for their attempts to implement social and political reforms in the Roman Republic. Their tragic end signaled a shift in Roman politics, highlighting the growing tensions between the reformist and conservative elements within Roman society. Oh yeah, and question for the audience, particularly my Ameribros out there. Do you know which political figures in the United States have been compared to the Gracchus brothers? Vercingetorix emerged as a Gallic chieftain and as a central figure in the Gallic resistance against Roman forces during Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars. He was born around 80 BC and came into power in 52 BC, immediately forming alliances with other Gallic tribes to oppose Roman expansion. Under his leadership, the Gauls initially achieved some successes against the Romans. He employed tactics like guerrilla warfare, which included burning bridges, cutting supply lines, and conducting surprise attacks. His main advantage over the Romans was his superior cavalry, which was more agile and skilled than the Roman forces. However, Caesar countered this by enlisting German mercenaries known for their horsemanship, thus beginning 2,000 years of enmity between the French and the Germans. And yeah, quick aside for Roman history newbies, the Romans could never produce good cavalry of their own, and relied upon tribal auxiliaries for horsemen. Thankfully for the Romans, they produced arguably the best infantry fighting units in human history. The turning point in the campaign against the Romans was the Siege of Alesia in 52 BC. Caesar's forces besieged Alesia, trapping the Gauls inside. Despite attempts by Gallic reinforcements to break the siege, Caesar's well-organized defenses held. The Gauls, unable to sustain themselves due to lack of provisions and facing the superior Roman military engineering, eventually capitulated. After his surrender, Vercingetorix was taken prisoner by the Romans. He was held captive for around 6 years before being executed in Rome in 46 BC, following Caesar's triumph. His surrender marked the end of significant Gallic resistance to Roman rule in the region. Boudica was a Celtic queen who led a major uprising against Roman rule in Britain around AD 60. She was born into an elite family in what is now Colchester around AD 30 and married Prasutagus, king of the Iceni tribe in modern-day East Anglia. The Romans, upon their conquest of southern England in AD 43, allowed him to continue ruling as a client king. However, after his death in AD 60, without a male heir, the Romans annexed his kingdom, confiscated his family's property, publicly flogged Boudica, and forced themselves on her two daughters. This series of events led to Boudicca's revolt against the Roman Empire. Boudicca led the Iceni and other tribes in a revolt that initially saw significant success. The revolt was characterized by its ferocity, violence, and the scale of destruction. However, the Roman governor eventually defeated Boudicca's forces in AD 61. Emperor Diocletian was born around 245 AD in Dalmatia, and ruled as emperor from 284 AD until his abdication in 305 AD. His rise from humble beginnings to the pinnacle of Roman power is notable. Before becoming emperor, he rose through the military ranks, eventually commanding the cavalry for Emperor Carus. He was proclaimed emperor by the troops after the deaths of Carus and his son Numerian on a campaign in Persia. Okay, and before you write a comment, I'm getting to the cabbages. Trust me, the payoff is worth it. Diocletian's reign was marked by significant reforms and stabilizations, bringing an end to the crisis of the 3rd century. He implemented a system known as the Tetrarchy, or Rule of Four, in which power was shared between 2 senior emperors and 2 junior emperors. Under Diocletian's rule, the empire underwent significant administrative and military restructuring. He doubled the number of provinces, organized these provinces into 12 dioceses ruled by vicars, and reorganized the military into mobile field forces and frontier units. He also enacted reforms to the tax system and took measures to curb inflation, although his attempt to control prices through the Edict of Maximum Prices was largely unsuccessful. Another notable aspect of Diocletian's reign was his religious policy, particularly his persecution of Christians. He sought to restore traditional Roman polytheism and viewed Christianity as a threat to this goal and to the stability of the empire. This led to the Diocletianic persecution, the empire's largest and bloodiest persecution of Christians. In 305 AD, Diocletian and his co-emperor Maximian abdicated their thrones, with Constantius and Galerius succeeding them. After his abdication, Diocletian retired to his palace in Split, Croatia, where he lived until his death around 312 AD. And yeah, you can go see this palace today. I've been there. It's great. And finally, the cabbage story. Following his abdication, his successors begged him to come back as co-emperor. Diocletian responded to the envoy sent to his palace. "If you could show the cabbage that I planted with my own hands to your emperor, he definitely wouldn't dare suggest that I replace the peace and happiness of this place with the storms of a never-satisfied greed." Diocletian died of natural causes 4 years later. So yeah, plot twist, Diocletian was the reincarnation of Cincinnatus, come to save the Roman people once again. Attila the Hun, a notable figure in history, reigned as the king of the Huns from 434 to 453. His reign was marked by significant conflicts with the Roman Empire. Attila was born north of the Danube River in the early 5th century, into the most powerful family of the Hunnic Empire. His upbringing was sophisticated, involving training in archery, sword fighting, horse riding, and military and diplomatic tactics. He was fluent in Gothic and Latin, reflecting a cultured background contrary to the typical barbarian stereotype. Also, it's worth mentioning here that the Huns had a large amount of Germanic peoples under their rule, hence Attila's fluency in Gothic. Upon the death of their uncles, Oktar and Ruga, Attila and his brother Bleda inherited the Hunnic Empire in 434. This empire spanned from the Rhine region to the borders of Sasanian Iran in the Caucasus. Attila was known for his aggressive military campaigns. He invaded various parts of Europe, including the Balkans, Greece, Gaul, and Italy. His military prowess expanded the Hunnic Empire significantly, making it a dominant force in Europe at the time. Attila died in 453. After his death, his sons struggled to maintain the vast empire he had built. Attila's legacy is complex, He is often portrayed as a ruthless barbarian, but historical accounts also acknowledge his diplomatic skills, strategic acumen, and the cultural sophistication of his upbringing. Personally, I view him as the thinking man's barbarian. Perhaps he read Virgil in the morning and did some pillaging in the evening. He may have enjoyed casually sacking a city, but he would loot some silks for his concubines and wives while he was there. The first triumvirate was an informal political alliance in the late Roman Republic. It was formed by three prominent leaders, Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. The charisma, the brains, and the money respectively. Side note, Pompey always struck me as a guy who would have been Julius Caesar, had he not have had the misfortune of being born at the same time as, well, Julius Caesar. Crassus died while campaigning against the Parthians in the east in 53 BC. And let's just say Crassus' thirst for wealth was finally satisfied. He went out drinking molten gold. Yeah, sounds like a scene out of Goldfinger, doesn't it? In 49 BC, Caesar crossed the Rubicon, leading to open conflict with Pompey and the Roman Senate. Caesar would defeat Pompey the next year, and he would flee to Egypt where he met an untimely end. The second triumvirate, unlike the first, was an official arrangement established in 43 BC for a 5-year term. It was formed by Mark Antony, Lepidus, and Octavian. This triumvirate had absolute authority, dictatorial in scope, and was aimed at organizing the state and quote-unquote restoring order to the Republic after the chaos following Julius Caesar's slopping. The second triumvirate famously ended up in another civil war, with Octavian defeating Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium. Oh yeah, and I remember asking my grade 11 history teacher about Lepidus back in the day, trying to get at why he was included in the triumvirate. I can't remember what he said about the substantive achievements of Lepidus, but he did drop a golden one-liner. Why did Lepidus always bring a ladder to the second triumvirate meetings? Because he was always trying to climb up to Caesar and Antony's level. Lucius Quinctius Cincinnatus, a Roman statesman and leader, is celebrated for his exemplar of civic virtue and selfless service to the Roman Republic. Born around 519 BC, his life, though likely historical, is often interlaced with legend and symbolizes the ideal Roman values of duty and humility. Cincinnatus's most famed moment came in 458 BC. Rome's army was besieged by the Aequi at Mount Algidus. In response, Cincinnatus was appointed dictator, a role granting near-kingly powers in times of emergency. According to tradition, he was plowing his farm when he received the news of his appointment. He swiftly raised an army, defeated the Aequi, and secured a limited peace. And if we know anything about Roman history, trying to remove him from power was a big deal, right? Nope. Remarkably, he relinquished his dictatorial powers just 15 days after assuming them, returning to his farm. This act of returning to simple life after achieving victory embodied the Roman ideals of placing the state's welfare above personal gain. But wait, there's more. Less famously, he even did it a second time about 20 years later. In 439 BC, Cincinnatus was appointed dictator to manage the crisis where a very wealthy plebeian was attempting to reinstitute kingship in Rome. And yeah, guess who saved the Republic? Your boy, Cincinnatus. Anyway, yeah, since he was given near absolute power twice, and peacefully returned power once the role was done, he was held to be an incredibly virtuous figure by Romans. Cincinnatus is basically the anti-Augustus. Where Augustus feigned Roman Republican virtues to obtain power, Cincinnatus lived them truthfully. And yeah, as I alluded to earlier on, the full historicity of Cincinnatus is doubted by many historians because he's basically just the perfect Roman citizen in every way. Then again, people like Julius Caesar and Alexander definitely existed, and their exploits are much more fantastical. Oh yeah. And one more thing. Cincinnatus was a great inspiration to the founding fathers of the United States, and George Washington was referred to as the American Cincinnatus in his day. And hey, it's beyond the scope of this video essay, but the parallels are uncanny. Okay, so we've already touched on Constantine a lot, but hey, he's significant. Constantine I, also known as Constantine the Great, was a pivotal figure in Roman and Christian history, reigning as Roman Emperor from 306 to 337 AD. Constantine's reign marked a significant turning point for the Roman Empire and Christianity. He is best known for being the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity and for initiating the evolution of the empire into a Christian state. This had a lasting impact on both Byzantine and Western culture until the present day. Also notably, while Constantine was personally Christian, he did not make it the state religion. The Five Good Emperors is a term used to describe a sequence of Roman emperors who reigned from 96 AD to 180 AD. This period is noted for its relative stability and good governance in the Roman Empire. The emperors who make up this group are Nerva, 96 to 98. Nerva was the first of these emperors, ascending to power after the slopping of Domitian. His reign, although brief, marked the beginning of this period of stability. Trajan, 98 to 117. Trajan is often celebrated for his military successes and the expansion of the empire to its greatest territorial extent. And yeah, if you've only seen one map of the Roman Empire ever, it's probably the Trajan map circa 117. Yeah, this dude was ruling from Basra to Britain and everything in between. Hadrian, 117 to 138. Known for Hadrian's Wall in Britain and his extensive travels throughout the Roman Empire, Hadrian focused on consolidating and fortifying the empire's borders. His reign was also notable for cultural patronage, especially of Greek arts. But yeah, to anyone who only has a passing knowledge of Roman history, he's the wall guy. Antoninus Pius, 138 to 161. Antoninus Pius was notable for his efficient administration and the peace and prosperity that marked his reign. He is also known for commissioning the Antonine Wall in Britain. Marcus Aurelius, 161 to 180. Co-ruling initially with Lucius Verus, Marcus Aurelius is remembered as a philosopher king and is the author of Meditations, a significant work of Stoic philosophy that is probably recommended to you on YouTube. His reign, however, was troubled by military conflicts and the Antonine Plague, and perhaps most destructively, naming his dumpster-tier son Commodus as co-emperor in 177. Importantly, these emperors were not related by blood, but were selected based on merit and adopted by their predecessors, setting a standard of governance based on ability rather than hereditary succession. This period is often viewed as the high point of the Roman Empire. And yeah, Marcus Aurelius, I'm looking at you here for choosing your incompetent son over adopting a skillful successor. Maybe if you were less aloof, you would have been out there looking for more capable adoptive sons. Well, here's a topic I have to tiptoe around. And yeah, that's a fig leaf. Sorry. The quote-unquote violation of the Sabine women is a notable episode in the legendary history of Rome, traditionally dated around 750 BC. According to the legend, the first generation of Roman men, under the leadership of Romulus, the founder of Rome, sought wives to establish families. To overcome this, Romulus devised a plan during the celebration of the Consualia festival, a public event that he had established. He invited the neighboring tribes, including the Sabines, to attend. During the festival, at a given signal from Romulus, the Romans abducted the young women. This act led to outrage and, unsurprisingly, sparked a war for Rome. In the ensuing conflicts, the Romans first faced and defeated the allies of the Sabines. When they finally confronted the Sabines themselves, the war reached a critical moment during a battle. At this point, the Sabine women, who had been abducted and had since become the wives of the Romans and mothers of their children, intervened. They courageously placed themselves between the battling armies, imploring their Roman husbands and Sabine fathers and brothers to reconcile. They argued that they would rather die than see bloodshed on either side of their families. Moved by their plea, the Romans and Sabines agreed to a peace treaty. The two peoples united under Roman leadership, with the Sabine women playing a key role in this unification. This event not only contributed to the growth of Rome, but also symbolized the importance of women in forging political and social alliances. From Sabines to silkworms, this is the story of how the silk industry was established in the Byzantine Empire. Silk, a highly valued commodity, was initially monopolized by China. By the mid-6th century AD, silk production had spread slightly beyond China, but still remained localized in East Asia. The Byzantine Empire, under the rule of Emperor Justinian, recognized the strategic and economic value of silk production and sought to end the Chinese monopoly. Around 551 AD, two monks, likely members of the Nestorian Church, which had ties in China and the Far East in general, and having observed silk production in China, approached Emperor Justinian with a plan to smuggle silkworms into the Byzantine Empire. Since adult silkworms were fragile and required a controlled environment, the monks opted to smuggle silkworm eggs or young larvae. They are believed to have concealed the eggs in their bamboo canes. The entire journey, which likely took a northern route through the Black Sea and Central Asia, is estimated to have lasted 2 years. The successful smuggling of silkworm eggs by these monks led to the establishment of a native silk industry in the empire. This development ended the Chinese monopoly on silk and allowed the Byzantines to dominate silk production in Europe. Silk factories were established in Constantinople and other regions, significantly impacting the empire's economy and trade. Oh yeah, and modern historians call the smuggling story into question, questioning whether the silkworm eggs could have survived such a journey. My take: don't judge it until you've tried it yourself. Legio IX Hispana, also known as the Ninth Spanish Legion, was a prominent legion of the Imperial Roman army with a rich and complex history, existing from the 1st century BC until around the start of the 2nd century AD. The legion was active during Julius Caesar's time, participating in his campaigns in Gaul and the Civil Wars. It also fought alongside Augustus in the Cantabrian Wars. The legion was known for its resilience, having survived mutiny and near decimation twice, only to recover each time. Under Emperor Augustus, the legion was sent to Hispania, playing a crucial role in the campaign against the Cantabrians. This is probably when it earned its nickname, Hispana. Afterward, the legion moved to the Rhine borderlands for campaigns against the Germanic tribes. Following the, to put it mildly, disastrous Battle of the Teutoburg Forest in AD 9, the Ninth was relocated to Pannonia. One of the most notable chapters in the legion's history was its involvement in the Roman invasion of Britain in AD 43 under Emperor Claudius. The mystery surrounding the legion revolves around its disappearance. The last confirmed record of the legion is from AD 108, during the rebuilding in stone of their fortress at present-day York. There are several theories about their fate after. At any rate, the consensus now seems to be, on the basis of updated archaeological evidence, that the legion was destroyed in Britain at some point in the early 2nd century AD, with the survivors being transferred to the continent and incorporated elsewhere. Pompeii, an ancient city in southern Italy, holds a significant place in world history due to its dramatic destruction and exceptional preservation. Pompeii came under the influence of various civilizations, including the Greeks, Etruscans, and Samnites, before becoming a Roman colony around 80 BC. It was strategically located near the Sarno River and Mount Vesuvius, which played a crucial role in its history and demise. The city, known for its bustling life, was home to approximately 12,000 people. It featured a diverse array of public and private buildings, including temples, theaters, markets, and baths, reflecting a vibrant urban Roman lifestyle. The economy was robust, supported by local industries and trade, while the social life in Pompeii was dynamic, with various social classes and professions represented. Pompeii's destruction occurred on August 24, 79 AD, when Mount Vesuvius erupted, blanketing the city in volcanic ash and other debris. The catastrophic event resulted in the quick burial of the city under more than 19 feet of volcanic material, which preserved it for centuries. The eruption claimed the lives of approximately 16,000 people in the region, including those in Pompeii, Herculaneum, and surrounding areas. The site remained mostly untouched until its rediscovery in the late 16th century, and systematic excavations began in the mid-18th century, marking the start of modern archaeology. Oh, and if you didn't know, you can visit Pompeii today, and I highly recommend that anyone who has made it through an hour of this video already does so. Pompeii's excavation has provided an invaluable glimpse into ancient Roman life, with well-preserved buildings, frescoes, and artifacts offering insights into the daily activities, culture, and social structures of the time. Mithraism was an ancient mystery religion centered around the worship of Mithra, an Iranian deity of the sun, justice, contracts, and war. The cult's origins trace back to pre-Zoroastrian Iran, where Mithra was considered one of the most important gods. It spread through Persia and later reached the Roman Empire by the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, where it gained popularity among soldiers and extended as far as Spain, Britain, and Germany. The most critical ceremony in Mithraism involved the sacrifice of a bull. The followers of Mithra participated in 7 grades of initiation, ranging from raven to father, with each grade having specific duties and types of clothing. Mithraic rituals were conducted in underground temples. These temples were widespread across the western half of the Roman Empire, with numerous archaeological sites found in various regions. Despite its wide reach, Mithraism declined rapidly after Christianity began to receive official endorsements starting in the early 4th century AD. The exact origins of Mithraism are debated. Some early sources and scholars believed it originated in Persia, while others propose it may have been a creation within the Roman Empire that borrowed elements from Persian culture. The lack of written narratives or comprehensive theology from the religion makes it difficult to ascertain its precise origins and beliefs. Further, it was a mystery religion, and, as you may have guessed, part of keeping the mystery alive was oral transmissions of the true nature of the religion. The donation of Constantine is one of the most notorious forgeries in history. Purportedly a decree by Emperor Constantine, this document claimed to transfer authority over Rome and the western part of the Roman Empire to Pope Sylvester I. Composed in the 8th century, it was based on legends dating back to the 5th century, but was later exposed as a forgery in the 15th century. The text describes how Constantine, supposedly cured of leprosy by Sylvester, granted the Bishop of Rome supremacy over the churches of Antioch, Alexandria, Constantinople, and Jerusalem. It also claimed that Constantine bestowed temporal dominion over Rome and other Western territories to the Pope. The document detailed the regalia and privileges granted to the Pope, including exemption from taxes and ecclesiastical autonomy. So yeah, it was a bit on the nose, so to speak. Note for anyone out there wanting to forge a claim, you don't throw absolute everything you want in the forgery. It makes it obvious. Anyway, this document dictated the relationship between the Holy Roman Emperors and the Pope, who were 2 of the dominant forces in Middle Ages Western Europe. Okay, so you would think establishing who the last Roman emperor is easy, right? Nope, you would be wrong. The identity of the last Roman emperor is a subject of historical debate, with several figures being considered for the title, reflecting the complex end of the Roman Empire over a period of 1,000 years. Julius Nepos is often regarded as the last legitimate Western Roman emperor. He ruled from June 474 AD to August 475 AD, during which he managed to restore a portion of Gaul to the empire. However, Nepos's reign was short-lived. He was overthrown by the Germanic Roman general Orestes and subsequently slopped by his own troops. Romulus Augustulus, technically the last Western Roman emperor, succeeded Julius Nepos. He was the son of Orestes and was around 12 years old when he ascended to the throne. His reign, however, was short-lived, lasting about a year. Further, Romulus was more of a puppet king under the control of his father than an emperor, despite having the title, and his leadership was never accepted as constitutional, especially by the Eastern Empire. Importantly, Nepos's claim was accepted by the Eastern Empire, lending credence to the theory that he was the last legitimate emperor. While the Western Roman Empire fell in 476, the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, continued to exist. The last emperor to rule over the Eastern Roman Empire was Constantine XI. However, his reign was limited to the city of Constantinople rather than a vast empire. The fall of Constantinople to the Ottomans in 1453 marked the end of the Roman Empire once and for all. Or did it? Remember the Empire of Trebizond I mentioned earlier in this video? David Komnenos, Emperor of Trebizond, is sometimes cited as the last Roman emperor. After the fall of Constantinople in 1453, some parts of the former Eastern Roman Empire remained free, including the Empire of Trebizond. David Komnenos ruled this city until it was overthrown by the Ottomans in 1461. However, in general, Romulus Augustulus and Constantine XI are generally accepted as the last emperors of the West and East, respectively. And yeah, if an author wrote a story about the final emperors of the West and the East, and named them Romulus and Constantine, respectively, you would probably think that was a little bit lazy, but that's reality, and it's sometimes poetic. The Roman Empire and Han China were well aware of each other, with the Han Empire believing the Romans to be a vast, powerful empire on the other side of the world, and the Romans believing the same. So yeah, they were right. Roman historians in the 1st century BC had vague accounts of China, often referring to it as the land of the silk-producing people. An interesting legend, albeit not historically verified, suggests that a group of Roman legionaries, captured in battle with the Parthians, ended up in China. They were said to have been sent east by their captors, eventually guarding the border against the Huns, and even fighting against the forces of Imperial China. The Romans and the Chinese also sent emissaries to one another, but diplomatic relations were hard to maintain on a 2-year time lag, and nothing meaningful came from these mutual emissaries beyond further trade. Oh yeah, and as discussed, Romans loved Chinese silk, having discovered it in the late Republican period. Nothing showed off your extreme wealth quite like wearing something made by a worm on the other side of the world. What better way to end this video than to discuss the successor states to the Roman Empire? The succession of the Roman Empire is not just a matter of chronological rulers, but also involves claims by other entities to the legacy of Rome. The Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, it continued the Roman legacy in the East until its fall to the Ottomans in 1453. You don't have to be an ERE Abu to appreciate that the Byzantines were the literal continuation of the Roman Empire. As such, it is hard for me to classify it as a successor, but rather a continuation. In the West, following its collapse, the Roman Catholic Church emerged as a significant power in Western Europe, and was the spiritual successor to the Roman Empire. The establishment of the Holy Roman Empire in 800 AD, with the crowning of Charlemagne, was an attempt to revive Roman imperial traditions in the West, on a temporal basis as well. I note that contrary to the memes, the early Holy Roman Empire was recognized and acknowledged as an empire by the Eastern Roman Empire, with royal marriages taking place between the two. Further, the Carolingians and the Ottonians were the foremost leaders in Western Europe in their day. The Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire both made claims to the legacy of the Roman Empire. The Ottomans, having conquered Constantinople, saw themselves as legitimate successors, while the Russian claim was rooted in religious and dynastic links to Byzantium. Oh yeah, and there is a fringe belief that the United States is the true successor to the Roman Empire, and the United States borrowed heavily from Roman imagery. Oh yeah, and I mean, being founded in part by a guy who can credibly be called an American Cincinnatus helps too. Thank you so much for watching this video. It took a ton of work to make, and all I ask is that you like and subscribe in return.